hi there. This video is going to be about multiplying fractions. It shouldn't be a very long video. I always say that, but I think it's true this time. Before we get into how to multiply fractions, I'm wondering if you remember how to add fractions. So let's say we had something like 1/3 plus 1/3. If you remember from adding and subtracting fractions, which is a video I just did before this one, we learned that you have to keep, well, first of all, you need to have the denominator the same, which is down here. And if it's the same already, you just write it again, which we have here. And you add the top in this case because it's adding. So 1 plus 1, you get 2. Now, multiplying, it would be very similar if we had, I'm going to put it in a bracket like this. Okay, what if we had 2 times 1/3? Well, that's exactly what we just had here. This is 2 times 1/3, and the answer was 2/3. The nice thing about multiplying is that you don't have to find a common denominator. All you have to do is, well, if you have a normal number, like a whole number like this, which is a 2, you can turn it into what looks more like a fraction by just going 2 over 1. Okay, you can do that with any whole number. You can just say that's just 2 over 1. Now we're going to multiply these two. 2 over 1 times 1/3. All you do is multiply across the top, and that's what it's explaining up here. Multiply across the numerator, and then multiply across the denominator. So let's do that. 2 times 1 is 2, and 1 times 3 is 3. Do you see how multiplying is so quick? You don't have to worry about a common denominator. It's so nice and fast. So I actually prefer multiplying fractions than adding them or subtracting them. Okay? And the video that I do after this will be about how to divide them. Okay? So let's clear the screen here and let's look at the first question. Now you know the rule. 1 over 4, or 1/4, times, and sometimes we use brackets and sometimes we still use that little x to show times. But you just multiply across the top, multiply the numerators. 1 times 3 is 3, and 4 times 5 is 20. That's right. If you can, then try to reduce your fraction, okay? If you can. And I have a video on that as well, okay? On how to reduce fractions. Of course, we'll be doing it on this video as well if we see it. But 3 over 20 cannot be reduced because I cannot think of a number that divides 3 and divides 20 evenly or nicely, okay? So just don't forget to reduce if you have to or if you're able to. Let's try the next question. 48 times 9 over 32. Well, here's a situation just like we spoke about. 48 times 9 over 32. Remember what we did with the one I did earlier? You just make this into a fraction, and any number, any whole number can have a 1 put under it like this in the denominator, because 48 divided by 1 is still 48, so you're allowed to do that. Now the only problem with this situation is I'm trying to go quickly through this. So 48 times 9, I'm just going to quickly pop up my Windows calculator here. There we go. And I'm just going to go 48 times 9, 432. Wow. And that is over 1 times 32. Now, you're going to have to be familiar with videos that I've done before this one on not only reducing fractions, but also how to deal with what's called an improper fraction when the top is bigger than the bottom. And you can turn an improper fraction into something called a mixed number, okay, which is part of the title of this video. So let's first of all see if we can reduce this fraction. The best way to reduce is just kind of look at the top and the bottom, see if there's a number that you could divide them both by. Well, we could divide the top and the bottom by 2, but just for fun, I'm also going to make sure that we can't take 432 and divide it by 32, because that would quickly give us our answer. I'm going to go divided by 32. It doesn't. It gives us 13.5. So we're actually going to go through and reduce this as we were doing. So what we can do is just go 432 divided by 2, okay, and you can do this in your head if you like, because it is something possible to do in your head. 216 Whoops, it's still green. I apologize. That was supposed to be yellow. 32 divided by 2 is also, it's got the 16 there. Now, we can continue to reduce this. I've run out of room here, so I'm going to continue to reduce that right here. I'm going to divide 216 and 16 by 2 again. Now, can we do this in our head, people? I'm going to go back to yellow for this one. 216 divided by 2 should be 108 over what's half of 16? Just 8. Now look, it's still two even numbers here. I'm going to continue to reduce this. Okay, what's half of 108? I'm going to keep dividing this and keep dividing this by 2. Half of 108 should be, I think, 54, and half of 8 is 4, and we still have an even number. Okay, so I'm just doing this until we boil it down until we get something that can't be reduced. Half of 54 would be 27, and half of 4 is 2. At this point, I know that 27 and 2, there's not a number that can divide each of these nicely. What I'm going to do is the final step is turn this into a mixed number. So the way you do that, and I have a whole video on that, okay, so I won't go into it here. I'll just say it quickly. 2 times what would get us very close, just underneath 27? Well, 2 times 13 would give us 26. So that's as close as we're going to get. So you write the 13 as a whole number out here. You keep the 2 on the bottom, and you, again, in your mind, 2 times 13 is 26. How much more do you need to make 27? You put that number up here. And if you remember earlier, when I went 432 divided by 32, I'm pretty sure all of you remember, and we can hit rewind on this video, but the answer was 13.5, which is what we just found right here. So that makes me feel good because it means we got the right answer. Okay, let's move on to a few more questions and then we'll call it a day as far as this stuff is concerned. Now, we're starting with a mixed number in this question. So if we're starting with a mixed number, my favorite way to do these, and I know there's other ways to do them, but my favorite way is to change whenever you see a mixed number, just make an improper fraction, do what you need to do, and then put it back into a mixed number if needed at the end. Okay? So we're going to change this mixed number into an improper fraction. Once again, go 2 times 4, that's 8, plus 1 is 9. So 2 times 4 plus 1 is 9. And on the bottom, leave the denominator exactly as you see it here. So it's 9 over 4. Okay? And we're timesing by 2 over 9. Remember, this is called an improper fraction, and over here, this is called a proper fraction. Excuse me. Now let's multiply across the top. 9 times 2, it's 18. 4 times 9 is 36. And we can reduce both of these numbers. They're both even, so I'm just going to divide them both by 2. Instead of thinking too hard about it, I would get 9 over what's half of 36, people? I would say that's 18. Okay? Now, is there a number that could divide 9 and 18? Ooh, there is a number. You could use a calculator to guess, but you can divide 9 by 3, and you can also divide 18 by 3. Okay? So what would the answer be? 9 divided by 3 is 3. 18 divided by 3 is 6. Can we reduce this any further? Are we done? The answer is no, we're still not done, because you can still divide the top and the bottom here by 3. And some of you may be saying, why didn't you? Well, first let's get the answer. 3 divided by 3 is 1. 6 divided by 3 is 2. Why didn't you just look up here and divide the top and the bottom by 9? Then I would have got the answer of 1/2 right away. Well, I would say to you, nice call. I totally missed it. I wasn't thinking, and I just divided by 3. But I also want you to see that if you make not really a mistake, but if you divide by a number and you can still continue dividing, that's not a big deal. We still got it to the answer that we were looking for, okay? In fact, up here we could have divided the top and the bottom by 18. We would have got 1/2 right away. So yeah, there's different ways to do these questions, but in this case, that's how I did it this time. And this is just kind of how I naturally did it. And I think it's best for you to see how I naturally do it, even if there's mistakes, which there wasn't really any mistakes this time. It was just a different way to do it. Okay, let's look at the next question. Now, thank goodness we don't have to deal with a common denominator when you multiply. There are some little tricks that teachers can teach you with how to deal when you have a whole bunch of numbers like this. I mean, you could take the 6 over here and the 2 over here and reduce those two and then multiply across. But I'm not going to throw that curveball at you, or that shortcut, because sometimes shortcuts can actually be more confusing. So it's better just to get familiar with these things before we talk about shortcuts. So let's just go 5 times 10 is 50, and 50 times 6 should be 300. Okay? And then I'm going to get my trusty calculator out for this one and go 2 times 21, that's 42. We're going to multiply 42 times 11 for 462. So there's technically our answer, but as we've been doing all along, we should really reduce this. Okay? It is a proper fraction. We don't have to worry about making a mixed number, but we did have to deal with a mixed number over here, and it turned out not to be a mixed number in the end. That's kind of nice. This one, let's think. What can we divide 300 by and 462 by? Well, I just noticed that they're even numbers. As soon as I see even numbers, I start reducing, and 300 divided by 2 is 150, and half of 462 should be 231, if I'm not mistaken. We don't have even numbers here. 150 over 231. I'm going to bring that over here just to think about. 150 over 231. Is there something we can divide by to reduce the top and the bottom? The 31 here does not look very promising. So you might just want to just test it out with a calculator and just see. Here, I'm going to clear this. Let's try, 150 we know can be divided by a lot of things. 2, 5, 10, etc. But the 231, not as easy. We know it can't be divided by 2. So if you take a calculator and just try to divide by, randomly try a 3, it's the next number up from 2. Oh wow. So I wouldn't have seen this right away, people. I would have maybe thought that this was already reduced, but 77. So when we divide by 3, and you have to do it to the top and the bottom, and it certainly will work with 150, we now know that 231 divided by 3 is 77. And 150 divided by 3 we know is 50. Is there anything that would divide 50 and 77? Once again, my intuition says I don't think so. 77, you could try dividing by a number like 11, but the problem is I know 50 won't divide by 11 nicely. See what happens? That's what happens, okay? You get a repeating decimal like that, not good. 7, 14, no. So you could fool around with a calculator and just see if you can reduce this any further, but I think you're going to find out that this is as far as we can go, okay? This is going to be our final answer in this case. We've reduced it, we've put it in lowest terms, and we have learned to multiply here, folks. Hopefully now you can go ahead and do the homework that your teacher is asking you to do with regards to multiplying fractions. The next video I'm going to do is on how to divide fractions. It's almost the same. It's not much trickier than multiplying. That's the good news. Okay, have a great day, everyone.